Hi everybody, welcome to ATAR Notes free January 2024 lectures. My name is Sophie and you are here with me today for our preliminary Year 11 Standard Maths lecture. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just before we get into anything maths related, I am just going to do a little bit of an introduction about ATAR Notes and who you're here with today. So if you aren't familiar, ATAR Notes has been around since 2007, providing resources to high school students just like you, mainly year 11 and 12 students. And we've been offering free lectures just like this one since 2015. So we're headed into our 9th year of doing that. It's in line with our mission here to provide you with as much free stuff as possible. And so that's why you can access these lectures without any payment or any commitment. And so if you're looking for any information or if you're looking to get involved with some of the other free or paid versions of notes or lectures or resources that we have available, please check out anything ATAR Notes related at atarnotes.com/register. You'll also see a little graphic on the screen here that explains everything that we provide. So as I said, we have hundreds of downloadable study notes. Those are all free. We have free lectures that are hosted by ex-HSC students like myself. We have our online Q&A and discussion forums, videos that encourage engaging online revision. We have our newsletters that keep you up to date with any changes or new news or differences in curriculums and syllabuses and the HSC in general. We have an ATAR calculator. We also publish articles with our personal study strategy and tips. And there is heaps more if you just head on at atarnotes.com/register. Those are all of our free resources. As you can see here, we've also developed through ATAR Notes Plus, which is our paid model, our AI answer bot, where you can ask questions about our books and content. And you'll also see that we have over 1,000 study resources that are published for most of the content that is covered in the HSC in your subjects like biology, business, chemistry, as you'll see on the screen. For standard maths, we have a standard maths study notes booklet that explains how to answer questions, and then we have a standard maths topic test booklet that has questions for all of the units that you cover in year 12. And I personally in tutoring find those incredibly helpful. Alrighty, so as I said, you're here with me today for our January lecture series covering prelim standard maths. So you are jumping headfirst into year 11. You are in your final 2 years of high school, which is very exciting. And I'm here to help you dip your toes into year 11. Okay, so how will this lecture work? This is a pre-recorded lecture with a live chat. So I'm recording this in advance. I can't talk to you through the lecture. I can't answer your questions in the video, but I'll be answering your questions in the chat. So it's going to run for 2 hours approximately. You can ask a question by using the chat that you should see on the screen. I'll be active, as I said, in the chat to answer your questions. I would also recommend downloading the slides. You can do this at any time. It just helps you keep up if I move too fast or if you'd like to move faster than me. You can also scrub the button at the bottom of the live video so you can jump back or jump forward depending on how quickly you want to move compared to me. The video will also remain available after the lecture, so you don't have to finish it within the 2 hours or hour 50 or however long this runs. You can finish it whenever you'd like. You can pause it. You can come back whenever you need to. Okay, so by the end of today's lecture, we're going to have covered 4 different topics from the standard maths prelim syllabus. So the first thing we're going to cover is earning and managing money from the financial maths topic. This is usually the first financial topic you'll cover. We'll then look at formulae and equations from the algebra topic, and then measurement is one of the biggest topics. So we're going to do 2 sections. We're going to start with working with time, which you should be quite familiar with, and then we'll move on to practicalities of measurement. Everything on the screen here you've hopefully kind of heard of before: financial, algebra, measurement. You've definitely done all of this stuff in a different way in year 10 or year 9, but we'll be jumping in obviously to our year 11 content today. Okay, so a little breakdown of today's lecture and how it will be structured. So firstly, I'm going to talk a little bit about me. I'm going to give you an intro to who I am and who I am in relation to being your lecturer today. We're then going to talk about making study manageable, as you are definitely moving into a completely new phase and kind of uncharted territory in high school. We'll then jump into our 2 content blocks. So we'll start with our financial maths and then our algebra. And then our second content block, measurement. You can see along the bottom of the screen, we have kind of a timeline that will show you what section of the lecture we're in. There won't be any breaks or pauses or anything. Again, if you need a break or to pause, which I encourage you to do so if necessary, you can always pause the video or just come back and re-scrub back to that section later on. And finally, we'll do a little bit of a wrap up, last minute questions and tips. And I kind of like to talk about a few things at the end that as this isn't a live lecture anymore, I like to just kind of answer the questions at the end that I always get when I do live lectures. So I'll answer those for you anyway, as well as in the chat. Oh, pardon me. I'll answer the questions that you have in the chat as well. But you're more than welcome to ask questions throughout the entirety of the lecture. Okay, a little bit about me. So every year, this year gets further and further away. I graduated in 2020, which used to seem really recent, but now this is my 4th year out of high school. From Bethany College in Hurstville, I had an ATAR of 95.6. I studied English Advanced, Standard Mathematics, Studies of Religion, Unit 1 or 1 unit, Modern History, History Extension, and Society and Culture. In Year 11, I did Ancient History, and I also did Extension English, and I didn't do History Extension until Year 12 because it's a Year 12 subject. So I started on 12 units. I very briefly jumped to 13, then dropped back down to 11. So I picked up Extension and I dropped Ancient, so it's on 11. And then I dropped English Extension in June of Year 12. So I dropped down to 10 units by the time I sat my HSC exams. I got a band 6 in all of my subjects except for History Extension, where there's a different scale. I got an E3, I got 44. You need a 45 for an E4, which is the highest. So I was 1 mark off of straight band 6s. And when I tell you that, when I realized that, I did not care at all because I was just so happy to be done. So yes, I was very close to all band 6s, but I got band 6s in the rest of my subjects. I got my highest mark in standard maths. From memory, it was like a 94, which I probably should have written that down, but I knew that it was band 6, so we'll just leave it at that. Good enough, right? I am currently studying a Bachelor of Arts and Laws at UNSW, so this was my 4th year of university that I'm going to start in February. I've switched degrees a couple times. I started in a Bachelor of Politics, Philosophy, Economics for 1 term, and then I realized I really, really, really didn't like economics. So I switched to a Bachelor of Arts, and then at the end of my 1st year, I transferred into a Bachelor of Laws because I changed my mind and I wanted to do law after telling everyone I was never going to study it because I thought it would suck. I have a beautiful German Shepherd named Luna. She is love of my life, my queen, my purpose, my everything. Love her. But I do like to introduce her because she usually makes like an audio appearance at some point, so she may bark, and that's what that is. Teacher's pet, but in a cool way. I keep this here because I think it's good encouragement for you to not feel embarrassed if you are a student who particularly likes your teachers or finds solace in going to school and enjoying being at school. I was often one of those kids who liked going to school, and especially in year 11 and 12, if things were tough or if I was going through something, being at school was something that I liked being at. And my teachers were definitely people who had a great influence on me. So I will wear the badge of honor when it comes to being a teacher's pet. I guarantee that I procrastinate more than you, but I talk a lot about procrastination in my lectures because people have a million questions. How do you deal with it? How do you cope with it? Blah, blah, blah. I'd like to think that I'm fairly successful academically and in life despite my severe procrastination. So just as like context, I'm recording my lectures the day that they're due. Granted, it is during the holiday period, so you know, it was always going to be quite late, but I don't do things particularly early. I like to keep close to the deadline. And then one of my non-academic tips for the HSC is to plan something amazing for afterwards. Obviously, this is quite far for you guys, but you could even plan something for the year 11 to year 12 holidays. At the end of this year, I went on the best camping trip of my life with 7 of my friends, and it was amazing. Amazing. You want things to look forward to is essentially the lesson there. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how you can study for maths. You are a new year 11 student. You've been studying year 7 to 10, and you probably fall into like one of 2 camps, right? There are students like me who were kind of studying their butt off from year 7, And I'm not going to argue as to whether that's the appropriate way to approach high school or not. I think there's benefits to working hard the whole time, and there are massive negatives to working hard the whole time. So I was kind of working hard from year 7. So once I got to year 11, coming home and doing my extra, homework and making flashcards and doing practice papers was not very new for me. And then there's the other group of students who maybe are a bit smarter and in terms of like balancing up how worthwhile studying is, and spend year 7 to 10 not working as hard. But then when they get to year 11, they're kind of not experienced in this higher level studying or this higher frequency studying. So that was one benefit of me being kind of academically focused from the start, was that when I got to year 11, it wasn't a huge jump. But for a lot of students, it is. So I kind of want to give you guys some of my tips for how... Apologies, guys. You know what January is like. Constantly tired despite getting the most sleep that I will all year. So I want to kind of give you guys some tips as to how you can study for maths, whether you have been a frequent studier from year 7 or from year 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever to now, or if you are not someone who's really been a big studier and you think that year 11 is kind of going to be your first big jump into that. All right, so the first tip is to start now. It becomes much less overwhelming the earlier that you do some groundwork. So it is January and you are attending a free lecture. So I have to think that you're at least putting some effort in, definitely more than I put in right before year 11 started. I was not going to lectures, though I did used to go to the 8 notes lectures in high school. What I would recommend is not doing anything crazy, but just getting your head around what you're going to be learning. So you'll have a syllabus that you can print out. There's one page in the year 11 syllabus that is just like the little table of everything that you'll be learning. I think printing that out can be super helpful, keep you aware of what you have to cover, and you can kind of have that set up so you can like tick off the topics as you go through, or put a little checkbox next to them of like, finished in class, finished notes, finished practice test, or something like that. So just preparing your materials, preparing your binder that you take to school, labeling your books if you use books, whatever it is that you think you need to kind of be prepared with, to go into class not completely scrambled in your head. That's the kind of groundwork I'm talking about. I'm not saying to start all the content. I'm just saying get your head around, what you might be learning about. Okay, keep a rule book. This is like super, super important. I'm just looking to see if I don't think I have it here, but a rule book or a summary sheet book is what I would recommend. Now, some people like to have like a little notebook kind of this size that they take to class, and they write like, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, Pythagoras' theorem, in their book at the end of class. What I preferred to do, sorry guys. What I preferred to do was to just keep my maths book, and I would do my notes and I would do my questions and I would do everything in my maths book. And then when we finished a topic, I would come home, I would get one A4 sheet of paper and I would turn that into a summary page. So I would write kind of the key points from that unit. So go through the syllabus, go through my textbook and go through my book from class and figure out what the notes were that were really important. And I would jot those down onto a summary sheet. And so by the end of year 12, for example, I had 10 summary sheets that covered the 10 chapters, or the, 5 main units or 9 subunits or whatever it was. Okay, so figuring out what you need help with and targeting it. This might seem really obvious, but a lot of students have trouble prioritizing and listing things in order of what is the most important. So I remember one specific day in year 12 where I was sitting in the library after school and I had been struggling with bearings, and I knew that I needed to revise bearings, which is from the, bearings is from like the trig topic under measurement. In year 12, you don't have to worry about that just yet. Don't worry, it does suck though. But I was practicing something else called simultaneous linear equations, and I had really nailed those by that point. I was getting them all pretty much correct. And I remember I was sitting there doing simultaneous linear equations and almost enjoying it because I was getting this thing right over and over again. And I knew deep down that I had to do my bearings work. And what I was struggling with there was spending time on something that I already understood instead of targeting something that I knew I needed to do. And so that's kind of the mental battle that you'll have to kind of play, is doing the work that you know you have to do, despite the fact that it might not be the fun part, or it might not be the part that is going to come to you very easily. So what I recommend for that is something called the traffic light system, where you write down like all the units that you have to cover. So you write down like networks, measurement, blah, blah. You put all the units you're covering, and then you sort them by traffic lights. So red is something that you are really struggling with. If it was on the exam, you would be not good. You would be losing marks left, right, and center. Orange is something that you are like, you know what? I guess I get like maybe 60% of the questions right, but I could definitely use some more work. And green is, if I was sitting the exam tomorrow, I'm pretty confident I get the questions right. So you sort things by red, orange, green, and then your revision goes red, orange, green. So you target all of your red topics first, then all of your orange topics, and then your green topics for some extra kind of morale boost if they're that green. That's the traffic light system. That's something that I think is super helpful. Know that there is always someone who can help you. First of all, your teachers are being paid to help you, ask them questions. If you've got great teachers, that's great. So many students, whenever I say this, go, my teacher sucks, my teacher sucks, my teacher sucks. Now, that's not a, determination for me to make, and often people do underestimate teachers and what they're capable of. But yes, there are, I'm sure, people who have some less than ideal teaching situations, depending on a million different factors. If that is the case and you don't feel like that's the person that you can approach, I would recommend seeing if any of your peers understand. They're the ones going through it with you. Maybe they understand it better than you do. There are other teachers in the school you could potentially approach. Some schools have I know mine had a maths thing that you could go to at lunchtime, like a maths study group or something. I don't know what that looks like at other schools, but generally there's hopefully something you can go to. Past students often come back and do tutoring. So I tutored students for free at my high school once I left. And then outside of school, you've got YouTube and ATAR notes and EdRoll. You've got a million different things that you can go and use. There are also some kind of upcoming things with ATAR notes that would be very, very helpful for this, in kind of the vein of giving you specified content revision. So keep a lookout for some announcements in that space. But there's always a million things that you can find and use. You've also got tutors and tutoring. You can go the paid model with something like TuteSmart, which runs private tutoring sessions and also group tutoring depending on the subject. And then you've also got ways that you can source free tutoring as well, or something like this, a free lecture. There will always, always, always be someone or something that can help you. So if that first port of call isn't working for you, please don't give up and please continue looking. Study with friends. Now this one comes with a massive asterisk on the end. Now look, your friends are the only people that will truly, truly, truly understand what it is like for you, right? So this is my 4th year out. I still have a fairly good memory of what year 12 was like, and I feel like I can impart some good advice. But it's been 4 years since I was sitting, the beginning of year 12, or about 3.5 years since I sat those final exams. So I don't remember it as crystal clear as someone who just finished would remember it. And I'm definitely not experiencing it the same way that someone in year 11 or 12 is experiencing it. So look for those people around you that understand what you're going through, and can empathize with potentially the struggles you're having in class, and see if studying with them could potentially be beneficial to the both of you. However, studying with friends often is a bit of a black hole into doing absolutely no work, and that's not always a bad thing. If you need to book in a study session with your friends at the library in the holidays and you don't really get anything done and you just hang out that day, honestly, it's not the end of the world. You need to hang out with friends, you need to relax, you need to, in my opinion, don't ever do anything on a Friday night. You've got the weekend. So there definitely is time that you need breaks. In fact, you should be taking a lot of breaks. So studying with friends, yes, can be very helpful, but also if you feel like it's just going to be a waste of time, be aware of that. And if you accept that, you go into it anyway. And that's what I did a lot of the time. But there's definitely some friends you can study with really well and you can't study with at all. I had a friend who we would, because I was in year 12 in 2020, which was obviously the first year of COVID, we would set up FaceTime with each other and would just mute ourselves and just sit there and work. So we could see each other, and sometimes we'd distract each other and get off mute and talk for a bit, but we could at least see each other, and there was just someone else sitting in my room studying with me, and I found it quite helpful. All right, take care of yourself. These next 2 years are going to be intense academically. But if you neglect your physical and mental health, they are going to be much more intense than you imagined. So looking after yourself, making sure that you have physical ways that you can exert your energy. I was training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time, so 2 or 3 afternoons a week I was beating up my brothers. Worked for me, they annoy me, so basically going to a class where I got to, do a little arm bar on them was quite fun. I also worked, I was a children's swimming instructor, so I taught kids how to swim. That got shut down in 2020, around March or April, so that didn't continue throughout my entire HSC, but I was working it for about 6 months prior. I had friends who were working in retail, friends who were working in cafes, friends who were doing netball and soccer and track and a million different things. And if you don't have the ability or the time or the money or the effort to do those things, that's completely fine. But you definitely do need ways to get out of this space, right? Most people study in their rooms. I know my desk is in my bedroom. And you can become very insular. So it's very important that you take that time that you aren't studying to obviously relax and do nothing and binge TV shows and eat and relax a million times over. But you also need to use that time to go for walks or do yoga or take a bath or meet up with friends or go for a run, whatever it is that works for you. I found that yoga and stretching could be quite relaxing, and also just being on FaceTime calls with friends. And I know when COVID started, every morning for a while we would get on and it'd be someone's job to run a 15-minute little workout. So one of us would run here's 15 minutes of ab workouts we can do before we jump into homeroom. We sound very motivated now that I'm looking back. We are nothing like that now, but life definitely changes, and I've never worked harder than I did in year 11 and 12. Uni is a breeze compared to year 11 and 12, in my opinion. Okay, so let's talk about studying. Before we jump into any content, we're just going to talk about my opinions and kind of tips and tricks when it comes to actually studying. These are the things that I think are kind of most important. Break your work into manageable chunks and be realistic about what you can get done. Oh my goodness. I used to make to-do lists that even if I was, I don't know who's the smartest person, Albert Einstein. Even if I was Albert Einstein, I could not have gotten them done that day. I was making this full modern practice paper, 50 English flashcards, 10 maths. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing all that work. Be realistic. I've never done that much work in a day. I would shrink that down to modern practice paper, 5 English flashcards. Don't even worry about the maths. A practice paper in itself is 3 hours, right? That's a lot of work. And if you're like me, I can't really sit still for 3 hours unless I'm actually in an exam hall. So that would be broken down into do part 1, do part 2, do part 3, do part 4. Oh, it's taken 6 hours. So you have to be realistic. I am a massive to-do list person. I do my short ones on my little post-it notes that just kind of sit on my desk. I have notebooks that I write everything in. I'm not kidding. There's always notebooks everywhere. This one is finished. This one is finished. I actually see another one finished. I buy these from Officeworks in a 5-pack and I go through them in 6 months because I write everything. If I open this, it's that's actually one of my lectures I've given before. That's a to-do list. That is another to-do list. This is it's all just to-do lists. And I just find that keeps me the most organized and the most focused. So if you can break your work into chunks on those lists, it actually makes achieving things easier, because if the chunks are make summary sheet and that's a half-hour task, then you can tick a task off, right, by 10:30 in the morning. Then let's say that you've got sort out binder from school or print off assessment notification. My to-do list actually look print notification, annotate notification, make document. Because if I have 10 things on my list but I can tick 6 of them off within an hour, it makes me feel so much more motivated. All right, force that separation between school and home. You cannot replicate your school environment at home. Yes, I work from my desk, but I also have things on my desk that aren't school and uni and work related, right? So I have all my makeup and skincare here. I've got a mirror here. I've got my jewelry. I've got all my like lovely girl things over here. And then I've got, yes, my monitor, my laptop, I've got my pens, and I've got my work laptop and my binder and all of that stuff. But my desk is not a place where only work gets done, right? I sit here and talk to friends. I sit here and watch, Netflix or YouTube, or I sit here and do my makeup. I sit here every morning and night and do my skincare. So it's not just a school place, which is why it being in my room is okay, right? If you only study at your desk, I would really encourage you to try and study in other places, like your kitchen table, or if you've got a home study, or outside, or at a library. Trying to force that separation is really important. I think I moved my desk around a few times in high school, so it was on this wall and then it was on that wall, and it just gave me like a new perspective, right? Like, and I would kind of try and shift my whole desk setup, so move what side I sat on, or move where my books were, or whatever it was. There are so many ways that you can kind of force a reset and a separation. Remain social, FaceTime, online movie nights, play photo roulette with your friends. These are very much my ways of doing things, because I was doing year 12 during COVID, so I couldn't go anywhere. But still, these things stick, right? If you're tired as, ever, but you don't want to go out, but you want to hang out with your friends, you can do online movie nights. Me and my friends would play this game called photo roulette, which is always really fun. It's on your phones. This is all very like COVID core. There are a million things you can do. Obviously, now you guys can go wherever you want, so do that. But as long as you remain social, my rule was I never did anything on a Friday night, and I was usually with friends on a Friday afternoon. Get out for walks, exercise, yoga, meditation. This resets you. Even just like 5 minutes outside is like a reset for me. Like, it just helps so much. Yoga and meditation, I have my yoga mat that sits there that I bust out if I need to sit down and relax and play some music. Honestly, sometimes you just need to have a little stress cry, and that can be super, super helpful to just kind of like reset you. Be kind to yourself in all aspects. It's totally okay to be unproductive. Some weekends you're going to get absolutely nothing done. You are not a loser. You're not failing. You're not stuffing up. You're not ruining your life. I know that we're here to help you, and we're here to help you get the best mark you can. You could flunk the entire HSC and still be completely fine within 6 months. There are so many ways that you will be okay. But yes, sometimes you're unproductive. I'm unproductive a lot of the time. That is completely okay. It is never too late to start work. Starting at 8:30 might work for you. So many times I have wasted an entire day being so stressed that I haven't started working, and then by like 8:39, I'm a night owl, right? I just switch. I'm so focused and I can work for like 5 hours. So instead of bumming myself out about that, a lot of the time I just like make plans during the day now. And I'm like, I know that I'm going to do the work, right? So why would I waste my whole day stressing about the fact I haven't done the work yet? Like, I'm going to go to the beach and I'll do it when I get home. Or alternatively, I often put plans in the evening. So for example, today I'm going to grab food with my family tonight. So I know that I have to record my lectures during the day. I can't wait till 9 p.m., right? Not that I would, because then it would be very dark and depressing in here. So it's never too late to start. Figure out what works for you, not for other people. As I said, you've got to get out of your room. You have to take time off. You can't just be sitting here stewing in your ATAR notes or your, whatever's going on mess. You need to get out of your room. I personally don't think ATAR calculators are super helpful depending on who the student is. They can be interesting. They can give you an idea within maybe like 20 points, but they're not the end of the world. So if they're just stressing you out, stay away from them. For motivation, I was a big study tuber person, so I would watch people who were going through uni or high school. My 3 favorites were Unjada Jade, Ruby Granger, and Eve Cornwell. Most of them have graduated, so a lot of their videos of them like studying in high school. Unjada Jade and Ruby Granger, you would be looking at like videos from 2017-18. Eve Cornwell, you would be looking at her like YouTube videos from uni in like 2017, 18, and 19. But they all make great videos. I still watch them. They're all lovely people and very smart, interesting, beautiful women. Bottom line, you will get through this. This will be over within 2 years. It will be a blip once it finishes, but I understand that right now it is your entire life. That is a lot of talking and kind of lecturing from me that isn't maths related, but a lot of the content here is not super lengthy. So I like to give you that kind of good chunk at the beginning of me just giving my opinion, especially when we're talking about the beginning of year 11. So let's jump into content block 1. We're going to start by looking at financial maths, specifically the unit called earning and managing money. Okay, so earning and managing money. We're going to start by going through a couple of different definitions that give you a bit of an overview of what these terms that you'll see mean. The first thing is gross pay. So gross pay is the total income that a person earns. So it's their salary, interest from savings, rent from investment properties. It's all of the money that enters their bank account, right? So you will, obviously, we'll talk about deductions later, but you might earn money from babysitting, money from a savings account, money from your tax return, or you don't get tax from that, but money from work, money from netball training, right? This is your gross pay. This is everything that goes into your account. We then have allowable tax deductions. These are expenses that can be deducted from your gross pay. So when you go and lodge your tax, once you're an adult and you earn enough money to pay tax, things like a charity donation or buying your uniform for work or a work car if you're so lucky, or a work trip. These are all things that you can deduct from your tax, right? So the ATO says, look, we're not going to make you pay tax on the uniform that you bought to wear to work or the laptop that you do your work from. We then have tax payable. So this is the amount that you actually need to pay to the government. So if you're not familiar with what tax is or why we pay it, in Australia, there are a lot of things that we essentially get for free. So Medicare is fairly free. You get, your bins are, provided to you from the government. The roads are built. We have hospitals. We have free public schools. We have healthcare. We have events and entertainment and so many things that we can access for free that we pay tax so the government can do that, right? So the tax payable is the amount that you need to pay to the government, and it's calculated based on how much money you earn, which is your taxable income. So it's your gross pay minus all of those deductions, and that is the taxable income that we use to calculate how much tax you owe the government. That is Luna running around barking. Okay, net pay is the amount of income a person owns after tax and deductions. So you can kind of think of it like this. We start with our gross pay. This is everything. We then minus our deductions. We then pay our tax, which is calculated based on this and this. And then once that's gone, we're down to our net pay. So this is the amount of income that's actually going to go into your bank account. Okay, there it is. Taxable income equals gross pay minus allowable tax deductions. Okay, so the Medicare levy, this is kind of what I just referenced. This is an additional tax that we pay so we get free or subsidized public health care. So when you go to the doctor and you go in and you might get, just a little ear exam because your ear hurts, you hopefully might not have to pay anything. Or if you're my age, you pay like a gap. So you pay like $12 or something because the rest of it's covered by Medicare. So it's currently 2% of a person's taxable income. So if my taxable income is $100,000, my Medicare levy is going to be $2,000. Now that might seem like a lot, but if you've ever seen someone like go to the hospital in the US, it costs like $6,000 to get the ambulance there, right? So people don't even call the ambulance. This is why we have Medicare, so that you're paying this amount, but then everything else is virtually free. Okay, so pay as you go, or PAYG. If you already are working, you might see this on your payslip. It's on my payslip. It says PAYG tax, and it will tell me how much tax my employers have deducted from those payslips. So this is a system where you pay tax throughout the year based on what the ATO or what your employer thinks you're expected to pay, right? So this is like if you earn, let's say, $1,000 a week, the government, right, and you do that for a couple of weeks, the government reasonably expects that you're going to earn $52,000 in a year. Now, this might not be true. You might lose your job. You might move jobs. You might get a pay rise. You might get a decrease in pay. But they suspect that you're going to pay this much. You're going to earn this much money that year. So they deduct an amount that they suspect you would be paying at the end, but they deduct it each week so that it just kind of adds up over time. Now, this means at the end of the year, you're either going to receive a tax refund where you get money back 3 years running. I've got those, luckily. Or you have to pay more. So this is where they actually underestimated how much tax you would be earning or paying, and so you actually have to go and give them more money. So this is what you want. This, no fun. But do pay it. Otherwise, you'll be guilty of like tax fraud or something. So the way that this works in maths questions is they're going to ask you a question about some hypothetical tax, and then they're going to say, does this person get a tax refund, or do they have to pay a tax bill or a tax payment? All right, so we calculate our tax payable using what we call a tax table. So you'll see that we have our taxable income, and then we have tax on this income. If you earn less than $18,200 a year, you do not pay tax. This is why I suspect most of you will be unfamiliar with paying tax, because if you're earning $18,200 a year as a year 11 student, well done, you're killing it. Most of you aren't. Once you earn enough, you'll move into one of these 4 brackets. Now, don't worry if this table looks old. It changes most years. The questions will use different ones. You don't need to know this table. You don't need to know anything about it, right? You just need to remember how to use it. The first thing is to find out which of these 4, unless it's under 18,000 brackets, your taxable income falls in. So you'll get an amount of money, you probably have to do some deductions, and then you figure out which one of these it falls in, and then you follow the instructions. So for somebody who earns between $37,001 and $90,000, or rather has that taxable income, their tax is $3,572 plus 32.5 cents for every dollar that they earn over 37,000. So if they earn, let's say 38,000, you would be doing 1,000, because that's the difference between 37,000 and 38,000, times 32.5 cents, and it would be something like $325 added to 3,572. Okay, so it makes a little bit of sense, hopefully in theory, but let's look at it in practice. Let's actually do an example. So this table shows the tax payable for different taxable incomes. It's the same one that I just showed you. Leslie has a gross annual salary of $92,000 and tax deductions of $1,200 for work-related travel and $350 for stationery. The Medicare levy to be paid is 2% of the taxable income. Leslie has already paid $22,400 in tax. Will Leslie receive a tax refund? Justify your answer with calculations. So this question is touching on all of the things we've just talked about. We have our gross pay, our deductions, our taxable income, our tax payable, and our refund or payment. That's all of the things we just talked about. So what we need to work out is our taxable income, which is this gross pay minus our allowable deductions, which we underlined. So 92,000 minus 1,200 minus 350 gives us a taxable income of $90,450. So we then need to work out the Medicare levy. So we know that we have a taxable income of $90,450. The Medicare levy is 2% of that, which is $1,809. And so now we know our taxable income is $90,450. Our tax payable is going to fall into this bracket because it's between $87,001 and $180,000. So we follow the instructions. $19,822 plus 37 cents for every dollar over $87,000. So we have to find every dollar over 87,000 by doing 90,450 minus 87,000, and we times that by 37 cents. So we can see this is like $1.37. If you just timed it by 37, you would be getting your answer in cents, not dollars. And that gives us a number of $21,098.50. So let's go back through our question. The tax payable we've just worked out is $21,098.50. We've got a Medicare levy of $1,809, and we know Leslie has paid $22,400. So we know that she's paid $22,400. She actually owed $21,098.50 and 1809. So if we subtract both of these from what she's already paid, we actually end up with negative 507.50. Now, yes, this number is smaller than this number, but because of our Medicare levy, we actually owe a further $507.50 in tax. So this question, you would not receive a refund, you would receive a tax bill, and you want to answer it something like this. You would want to write like $507.50 payment, and then you can even indicate like right under that, will not receive a refund. You don't want to leave any ambiguity for them to go, oh, did they really understand the question? Did they really answer it correctly? You want to be as specific as possible. So you want to indicate they owe a certain amount of money, they will not receive a refund. Okay, so we're going to go through these questions together, but kind of in real time of me working them out so that you can see, okay, this is how I would work it out. You can kind of do it with me. This is from the 2016 HSC General 2 exam. Theo is completing his tax return. He has a gross salary of $82,521 and income from a rental property totaling $10,920. He is claiming $13,420 in allowable deductions. So the first thing we need to do is determine Theo's taxable income. So we have $82,521. He has income from a rental property totaling $10,920. So we have to add that because that's income, not a deduction. And he's claiming $13,420 in allowable deductions. So we're doing his gross income from his job plus the income from the rental property minus his allowable deductions. So 82,521 plus 10,920 minus 13420. And that gives me $80,021. So if we know he earns $80,021, he's going to be in this tax bracket, which means it's going to be $17,547 plus 37 cents for every dollar over 80,000. So $80,021 minus 80,000 is going to leave us with, so we do 17547 plus 0.37, and then we do in brackets, give me 2 seconds. Brackets, we go 80021 minus 80,000. And that should leave us with 17,554.77. Okay, so we've got 17,500. Oh, hang on. Actually, no, that was wrong. Let me check my answer. 17,568. Oh no, 17,500 and 54. Sorry, no, that's the correct answer. 77, and you'll see here we've got them worked out. Again, these are our correct answers: $80,021, $17,554.77. And again, it was $21 that we had over the threshold, which if we do times 37 cents, 37 cents gives us $7.77, which is added on to 17,547. Okay, here's another one of our questions. Last year, Luke's taxable income was $87,000 and the tax payable on this income was $19,822. This year, Luke's taxable income has increased by $16,800. Use the table to calculate the tax payable by Luke this year. Okay, so his taxable income was $87,000 and the tax payable on this income was $19,822. His taxable income has increased by $16,800. So we need to do 87,000 plus his new increase, which is 16,800. 87,000 plus 16,800 gives us $103,800. That places him in this bracket, which means we need to do 19,822 plus 37 cents for every dollar over 87,000. So it's 103,800 minus 87,000. And that should leave us with $26,038, I believe. 26,38. And then how much extra money will he have this year after paying tax as a result of the increase? Ignore the Medicare levy. It's just a minus problem. So last year he paid 19,822. So we go 19,822 was last year, and we want to subtract that from 26,038. 26,038 minus 19,822 gives us a difference of $6,216. So if we go paying tax as a result of the increase in his taxable income, so we want to add that to his new income, so 103,880. So you'll see here that once we've added that to we've subtracted our payable tax, then we've added that back on. So if we do, our payable tax was 103,800. So 103,800, we minus the tax we're actually paying, 26,038. That gives us $77,762. And we actually have an extra, what was the amount that we just worked out? Like 6,000 and something. And we add that to that. We compare that to the 87,000 minus 19,822 from last year. We end up with a difference of 10,584. So that's how you'd work the second part out. Okay, let's jump into one of our last questions here. Simon invests $4,000 for 3 years at 6% per annum simple interest. Monica also invests $4,000 for 3 years, but her interest rate is 5.6% with interest compounded quarterly. Calculate the total amount Simon earns after 3 years. Okay, so this is kind of giving you an insight into those interest questions. So interest is the amount of that you can earn on a payment that you give a bank, or it's an amount of money that you can owe. When we're investing, we earn money. So Simon invests $4,000. So simple interest, which hopefully you've covered in year 9 or year 10, is I equals PRN. So the principal is $4,000 times the rate, which is 6% per annum, so 0.06 times 3 years. So 4,000 times 0.06 times 3 years, he earns 720. Now, compound interest is our future value. This is kind of like, you won't usually use this formula, but I'm just going to show you for the sake of it, is present value 1 plus the rate to the power of n. So our future value, we want to work out for Monica. She invests $4,000 as her principal. Her rate is 5.6, but it's compounded quarterly. So 5.6 divided by the 4 quarters in a year is 1.4%. So 0.014 as a decimal. And she does that quarterly for 3 years. So that's 12 times. So 4,000 times, and then we do our brackets, 1 plus 0.014, close brackets, to the power of 12, which is very hard to do on a phone. That is how you get your answer, is via this. Now, whose investment is worth more? Without even doing it, I could almost tell you it's usually going to be the person who uses compound interest. I don't know if I have my calculator sitting here with me. It does kind of move around a lot based on, I think I've got it onto here. There we go. It's always missing after tutoring sessions, but I can confirm, hold on, 4001 plus 0.014 to the power of 12 is, 4726. And Simon's is worth 400 plus 720, so 4720. So Monica's is worth more. Fun fact, I've had this calculator since my first day of year 7, which was in 2015. So it is, I guess this is its 9th or 10th year, and you'll see it doesn't have any numbers anymore. They are completely rubbed off, but muscle memory, I know where they are. Okay, we're also just going to do this question as our very last. Find the rate of simple interest paid per year if an amount of $14,000 earned $5,880 in interest over 6 years. So this is where we're actually turning it around. So we know that it was simple interest and it earned $5,888. We know that our principal was $14,000. Scrap that. Hold on. Did that the wrong way around. Okay. So our formula, where's my pen gone? For simple interest is I equals PRN. Our interest was 5,880. Our principal was 14,000. Our rate is what we're looking for, and we know it was over 6 years. So what we can do is 14,000 times 6, which is 84,000. We subtract that from 5,880. So 5,880 minus 84,000 gives us a very large negative number. And then we want to divide that. We'll do this the other way. Instead of that, we'll divide 5,880 by 6. So we'll go divide this by 6, divide both sides by 6, and this becomes 980 equals 14,000 times the rate. And then we can divide 980 by 14,000, and that gives us 0.07, which is also equal to 7%. Isaac invests $45,000 at 9.2% per annum for 5 years with interest compounded 6 monthly. Future value of the investment. So we're looking for our future value. We've got $45,000 invested at 9.2% per annum, but it's compounded 6 monthly. So that's twice a year. So the actual rate is going to be 4.6%, so 0.046. And then we're going to pop, it's twice a year for 5 years, so it's 10 time periods. So 45,000, 1 plus 0.046, close brackets to the power of 10. This investment is going to be worth $70,555.25. Okay, that is earning and managing money and how to ace our tax and interest questions all wrapped up. So let's have a look at my kind of 3 top tips. First of all, read the question very carefully to make sure that you're using the correct amount for your calculations. If you use the wrong part of the tax table or the wrong interest formula, your whole question is stuffed. Next, to make sure to answer the question, if it asks the person receive a tax refund, yes or no answer. Show every calculation, so sometimes you can get those error carried forward or correct from previous working answers, even if you use the wrong part of the tax table, but you knew how to use the tax table. All right, we're now going to move into algebra, formulae, and equations. We're about halfway through our lecture. We obviously spent the first kind of half an hour talking about that other stuff, so we will not take as long with that first half of the content as we will with the rest of it. All right, so we're going to get confident with the basics of algebra. So we're going to have a look at substituting a number into an algebraic expression or equation, and we're also going to look at changing the subject of the formula. Once we know how to do that, we can then apply these skills to some common formulas. All right, so this might look very complicated. Given that I equals 3 over 2 mr squared, what is the value of I if m equals 26.55 and r equals 3.07? This is called substitution. So we've been given an amount and we can see those same letters in our question. all we're doing is placing our numbers where our letters are. So M is equal to 26.55, R is equal to 3.07, and we always place them in brackets. This avoids certain things like the squared attaching to the whole part of the equation, or the times attaching to this when it should be attaching to this, or whatever it is. And all we do is place that into our calculator and we get our answer, 375.35. So if there is no sign between letters and numbers, it means that they're being multiplied. So we can see this is multiplication and this is multiplication in here, which is why we've added them into our formula. Always put, again, the numerical values in brackets in your calculator. We're going to have a look at a couple substitution questions in our question section. That substitution, this is changing the subject of the formula. Those are our two things. Make y the subject of the following equation. So we've got 1 minus y plus 2t equals 8. So the subject is the part of the equation that everything equals to. It's kind of the smaller part. An equation will usually have a section that looks like that and a section about this big. Or it can be something that looks like this equals something that looks like this. So it's always going to be this smaller part here. The subject is currently 8. We want to make the subject y. So this is how we would do that. What you're essentially doing is trying to move everything over to one side. So what we'll do is we'll first move our subject over. This is a minus symbol, which means we have to plus y to both sides. So we end up with 1 plus 2t equals 8 plus y. This is a positive 8, so if we subtract 8 from both sides, we get 1 plus 2t minus 8 equals y, and then we can consolidate this side of this because these are both like terms, they're whole numbers, so it will end up being 2t minus 7 equals y. Remember, just like there, if there's no term, it's a multiplication. Every term is either positive or negative. If there's no sign in front of something, it's a positive. So this is positive, negative, positive, positive. This positive, 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 negative, positive, positive, negative, positive. If there's nothing, it's a positive. If there is a negative, it's a negative. All right, we're now going to look at making y the subject of this equation. You'll notice that this one's slightly complicated because we actually have a number attached to y. So this is how we would do that. First things first, our current subject is negative 2x. We're going to focus on clearing out this side and getting everything over. So what we're going to start by doing is the easy part, which is subtracting minus 4 from each side because we have a positive 4 here. That leaves us with minus 2x minus 4 equals 3y. Now to separate these two, this isn't a plus or a minus. This is a multiplication between those two. If there is no symbol between two letters or two numbers or a letter and a number, it is a multiplication symbol. So that means that we need to do minus 2x minus 4 equals 3 times y. So we're going to then divide each side by 3. That places this entire side over 3, as you can see here. But it actually just leaves y completely on its own, because when you divide this by 3, it cancels out 3. Like when we minused 4 from this side, it removed the 4, it cancelled out the 4. When you're doing the divide multiply each side, use fractions instead of the division sign. So don't do negative 2x minus 4 divided by 3, because you'll probably get mixed up and think that that only depends on this section and not this, when really the whole thing is over 3. All right, we have another one here. X equals 2, 4y minus 2. Make y the subject of the following equation. So here's how we would move through that. The first thing we want to do is expand our brackets out, right? So we've got 2 times. I want to divide each side by 2 because that will leave this completely on its own unaffected. And all it will do is make this x over 2. And you'll see that here. Then we want to move our negative 2 over, and we need to do that by adding 2 to both sides. So we end up with x over 2 plus 2 equals 4y. And then we can do another fraction, and we want to get y on its own. We divide each side by 4, and we get x over 2 plus 2 over 4 equals y. So as you'll notice, when we divide one side, we're dividing the entire expression. And that's why this whole section here moved on top of the 4 here. Okay, so moving into another section of formulae and equations, this is where we get asked about those kind of real world questions. So there's 3 different medication formulas, Young, Clark, and, it's not coming to me. I can't remember it right now, but there are 3 different medication formulas, Young, Clark, and another guy who's super important. Shout out to him. This is Young's formula. You don't need to remember these. They're on the question every time. So this is a formula we can use to calculate how much of an adult medicine a child should be given. So let's say we have like a strong cold medicine. This is about shrinking the dosage down for a child. So the formula is dosage equals age of child in years times the adult dosage in mils over the age of child in the years plus 12. So this question says how much medicine should be given in total to a 2-year-old if each adult dosage is 90 mils. So their age is 2 times 90, which is the adult dosage, 2 over 2 plus 2, 12. So 2 times 90 over 2 plus 12, and that gives us 12.857, which we would round, as it says, to the nearest mil to 13 milliliters. All right, here is a Nessa sample question that Nessa actually provides as an example. Which of the following correctly expresses t as the subject of b equals 2 pi r plus t squared? So to work this out, I kind of like to do a little bit of guess and check with these, but also just work out the question on my own. So the first thing that I think I'm going to try and do is get rid of this over to, 2 denominator here. And what I'm going to do is times each side by 2. So to do that, this ends up becoming 4 pi. So we'd end up having 4 pi because we're moving the 2 over here. And then we would be, also we'd have then r over 2 because we're expanding this out as well. So we would be timesing this by 2. Another way that we could potentially start is just by going b equals 2 pi and then in brackets r plus 2t, t2, sorry. No, we would do 2t. And that just kind of helps get rid of your fraction, right? But then we have 2 pi over everything. So what we can do is then we'd have, if we want to move our t over, we have to divide all of this by 2. So we then have 2 times b, divided by t, divided by 2, sorry, equals 4 pi over 2. And then it would be, what have we got in there? A minus r over 2. Because we've got this r here, and it's all, when we've gone back, it's become a minus because we don't treat this as a plus anymore. So then we'd end up with something like b equals, or t equals, because we want to move our b over, we would end up with b over 4 pi equals minus r over 2. So the reason we know that certain ones of these aren't correct, A, we would never be dividing by 2 pi, because if we divided by 2 pi, this would be divided by 2 pi. So we know this can't be correct. We know this one can't be correct again because of that divide by pi here. It wouldn't be divided by pi. It would have to be divided by a larger amount because it's already going to be times by 2. And this one here, we know that, again, 2r would not be able to get away with being divided if b and pi were. So that's kind of how we know D is correct, but also just by testing it. All right, so this is another section of the content that's kind of a real world example, and it's called blood alcohol content. And this is where we're treating our questions about if someone drinks this much, or if someone drinks this much over this many hours, blah, 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 blah. That's how drunk or not drunk they're going to be, or that's essentially like the scientific word would be like the blood alcohol content, or the alcohol content of their blood. Okay, so this question says, Chloe is a female. Her blood alcohol content BAC is 0.03. She's 60 kilograms and has been drinking for 5 hours. Given the BAC estimate formula, this is our female formula. We have a different formula for men. How many standard drinks has Chloe had? Give your answer to 2 decimal places. So here's how we would work that out. We have 10 times the number of standard drinks minus 7.5 times her height, and times the hours that she's been drinking, and then 5.5 times her mass, which is her weight. So we do 0.03 equals, because we're trying to find the standard drinks, 10n, because we don't know that, that's our question, equals, minus 7.5 times the 5 hours over 5.5 times 60 kilos. And we end up with this formula here. We're then going to change the subject, so we're going to times each side by 330, and that gives us 9.9 equals 10n minus 37.5. And then we're going to add 37.5 to the other side, which gives us 47.4 equals 10n. We divide 47.4 by 10, and we get 4.74 standard drinks. All right, we're going to continue on to a couple more practice questions here. Renee went bike riding on a holiday. The hiring charges are listed in the table below. What linear equation shows the relationship between C and H? So there's something to do with the hours hired and the cost. So going to test each of them. Let's use this as our testing column. So C is 24 equals 12 plus 6 times 2, which is our H. That is true. 24 is equal to 12 plus 12. So we think this is true so far. Let's check the others. We know that, so 24 equals 6 plus 12 times 2. That would be too high. We have 24 equals 18 plus 12 times 2. That would be too high as well. And this one will be too high as well. So A is our correct answer. C equals 12 plus 6H. Okay, John knows that $1 Australian is worth 0.62 euros and $1 Vistabella dollar is worth $1.44 euros or 1.44 euros. John changes 25 Australian dollars to Vistabella dollars. How many Vistabella dollars will he get? Okay, so we know that $1 Australian is worth 0.62 euros, but $1 Vistabella dollar is worth 1.44 euros. So 0.62 euros for Australian, 1.44 for a Vistabella. So we know 0.62 over 1.44, that the Vistabella dollar is about, the Australian dollar is about 43% less in value, something like that. So to answer this question, what I would do first is change the Australian dollars to euros and then go from euros to Vistabella dollars. So Australian dollar is worth 0.62 euros. So we've got 25 Australian dollars. We're going to times that by 0.62. And that gives us $15.50. So we've got 1550 AUD, we've got 1550 euros, which is 25 AUD. So 1550 euros. Now $1 Vistabella dollar is worth 1.44 euros. So if we do 1550 euros divided by 1.44, which is how much $1 Vistabella dollar is worth, we get 10.76, which is this answer here. Okay, Sandy travels to Europe via the USA. She uses this graph to calculate her currency conversions. So we've got our foreign currency and our Australian dollars. This is where the euros are at. This is where the US dollars are at. So 100 Australian dollars is worth about 75 US dollars and 60 euros. After leaving the USA, she has US 150 to add to the Australian 600 that she plans to spend in Europe. So she converts all this to euros. How much does she have to spend? So let's convert everything to Australian dollars. So she has 150 US dollars, and we can see that we've got 75 US dollars is 100 Aussie. So she's got 150 US, half of 150 is 75. So 75 times, or 100 times 2, she's actually got 200 AUD in American. So she's actually got 800 Australian. So you want to convert 800 Australian to euros. We want to find an equal section to convert to. So let's see, 100 Australian is 60 euros. We've got 800 Australian. So 60 times 8 is going to be 480. So she'll have 480 euros to spend in Europe. Okay, this is our last question. The formula D equals 2A over 15 is used to calculate the dosage of Hackelot cough medicine to be given to a child. D is the dosage of Hackelot cough medicine in milliliters. A is the age of the child in months. If George is 9 years old, what dosage of Hackelot cough medicine should he be given? So our dosage, we know he is 2 and his age is 9 months. And we're going to divide that by 15. So 2 times 9 over 15 is equal to 1.2 milliliters. 1.2 milliliters. So the second part of the question says, the correct dosage of Hackelot cough medicine for Sam, another child, is 4 mils. So his is 4 mils. What is the age difference what is the difference in ages of Sam and George in months? So we need to find this. So first thing we can do is times 4 by 15 to remove that 15. So it'll be 60 equals 2 times, we'll call this A. We can divide 60 by 2. So 60 divided by 2 is going to be 30. So A must be 30. So the age difference in months between 9 and 30 is going to be 21 months. Alrighty, that is all of our algebra content completed. So here are my 3 tips for you. Number 1, always substitute numbers in brackets. Remember in that first question I showed you, the MIR1, you always want to put your substitute numbers in brackets so that they aren't adversely affected by another part of the equation. And always write it down the way that you wrote it in your calculator. So when you divide or multiply on one side, you need to divide or multiply everything on the other side. So if you're moving the minus 2 over, you're minusing 2 from everything on the other side. You're minusing 2 from the other side. If you're dividing by 2, you divide the entire other side by 2. When substituting values into formulas, make sure that they are also in the correct units. You don't want to accidentally put milliliters in where you're actually putting liters or something like that. All right, let's move on to content block 2. This is all of our measurement content. The first thing we're going to start with is working with time. The first aspect of this that we kind of need to clarify is what latitude and longitude are. So you have probably done working with time at some point. It may have been a while. There are 2 terms that kind of come at the start of this unit, latitude and longitude. Latitude measures the angular difference between these great circles up here and here, and it essentially is the lines that run like the belt around the world. Longitude measures the angular distance between this east and west line and the back east and west line, you can imagine, is back there. So it's going this way. One way you can remember it is lat is flat, so lat is running flat across. And then long is long, like a long spaghetti noodle. All right, so we're going to work out how latitude and longitude, or longitude more specifically, helps us find time differences. There are 360 degrees on Earth. Remember, it's a circle, right? A sphere. So there are 360 degrees. 1 degree is equal to 4 minutes. So 15 degrees, right? 15 times 4 is equal to 1 hour. We also know the radius of the Earth. So this is that line is 6,400 kilometers. So if you're asked to find the time in a location which is east, so this way, you would be adding. And if you're asked to find something that's this way, you're subtracting. Think of it as like Australia, which is going to look a little something like this, right? Never forget Tasmania, is here, right? And this is ahead of, let's say, we'll draw Africa. So this is ahead of this, South Africa. Or it's ahead of Egypt, or whatever we're going to say. All right, we've got a couple questions here. Find the time difference between Sydney and Paris. So we know Sydney is 151 degrees east and Paris is 2 degrees east. The first thing we need to do is find the difference between these two east measurements. Now, time is not affected by north or south, right? We, Sydney, are in the same time zone as, hang on, let me confirm this on my map before I lie to you. So if you draw an upward line from Sydney, right, there are parts of Indonesia that are in the same time zone, or there are parts of the very east of Russia that are in the same time zone, even though they're way more north than us. So we're in the same time zone as those sections. However, we're not in the same time zone as South Australia. So you only need to look at the difference between the east and west. The difference is 149. Remember, 4 degrees is 1 minute. So we're going to divide, we're going to times 149 by 4 to get the number of minutes. 1 degree is 4 minutes. Swap that around like this. So there are 596 minutes. And then we're going to divide that by 60 and then convert minutes to hours. So there are 956 in your calculator, which is 10 hours. So I'll kind of show you what that looks like. You would go 596 divided by 60 and you would get like 9 something. And then you click this little bubble button and it goes 9 hours and 56 minutes. So that's 10 hours roughly. If it is 5 p.m. in Sydney, what time is it in Paris? So remember, the location is east, we add, west, we minus. So Paris is behind Sydney. So you kind of want to visualize it. The way I do it is like I actually draw a little like map in my head. So again, it's a very dodgy drawing of Australia. This is Sydney. And then we've got Paris right up here in France. And like this is the UK. And this is, we've got like Spain to the side, right? So this is all Europe up here. This is where we are. This is 10 hours behind. So you can kind of put them on like a little line, right? Paris, 2 degrees east, Sydney, 151 degrees east. We minus 10 hours from 5 p.m., which is going to give us 7 a.m. So you can kind of, I like to do it in my head, or you can do it on a calculator, but you have to change it to 24-hour time. I just kind of like to count backwards. You can also just minus 12 hours and then add 2 back to it. Okay, this is from the 2014 HSC General 2 paper. Singapore is located at 1 North 104 East and Sydney is located at 34 South 151 East. What is the time difference between Singapore and Sydney? Okay, so we have 151 minus 104. 151 minus 104 gives us 47. We're going to times that by 4 to get the number of minutes, which is 188. And then we're going to divide that by 60 to get the number of hours. Divided by 60, we get 3.13, which if I click my bubble button is 3 hours and 8 minutes. Let's check our answer. 3 hours essentially. All right, let's do this 2016 HSC General 2 question. Melbourne is located at 38 degrees south, 145 degrees east. Dubai is located at 24 degrees north, 55 degrees east. What is the difference in longitude between Melbourne and Dubai? So longitude, again, is these numbers, east and east. So we've got our 145 minus 55. 145 minus 55 is 90. So our difference in longitude is 90 degrees. The time difference is 6 hours. So we're going to do 90 times 4, which is 360. And if we divide 360 by 60, we get 6 hours. Now, this is where the questions get a bit more complicated, and this is kind of what you're actually on the lookout for in your HSC. Okay. A plane leaves Melbourne on Friday at 11:30 p.m. The flight time to Dubai is 15 hours. What will the time and day in Dubai be when the plane is due to land? So it leaves Melbourne on Friday at 11:30 and it lands 15 hours later. So the way I like to imagine it is that there is a friend waiting in Melbourne who will call me when I land in Dubai. Now I want to figure out what time it is for them in Melbourne when I land in Dubai. So I'm over here in Melbourne, Dubai is over here. It's 11:30 and my friend's flight takes off, or my flight takes off, right? I get to Dubai 15 hours later. I want to call my friend in Melbourne 15 hours later to be like, hey, I landed. What's 15 hours after 11:30 p.m.? It would be, so if it was from midnight, 15 hours would be 3 p.m. the next day, but we have to subtract half an hour. So it's 2:30 p.m. on Saturday in Melbourne when I land. But Dubai is 6 hours behind. So to check the time that it would be in Dubai, I subtract 6 hours. It would be 8:30 a.m. in Dubai when I land. Okay, here's another example. Island A and Island B are both on the equator. Island B is west of Island A. The longitude of Island A is 5 degrees east, and the angle at the center of the Earth O between A and B is 30. So you can see that it's kind of drawn out this little triangle or trigonometry problem for us there, right? So the question for question A, what is the latitude and longitude of Island B? So we know that this is O, it's just on the equator, and it's 5 degrees east. But then we have a 30-degree difference. So we want to do 5 degrees minus that. So if we're moving west, it's actually going to be from 180 degrees west, counting down. Or actually, no, it'll be counting up west. Sorry, my mistake. So it's going to be adding 30 degrees. So it would be 25 degrees west, but it's also on the equator. So it's going to be 0 degrees. What time is it on Island B when it is 10 a.m. on Island A? Well, remember there's a 30-degree difference. 1 degree is 4 minutes, so that's 120 minutes, which is going to be 2 hours. 2 hours behind Island A is going to be 8 a.m. All right, I am flying from Adelaide, which is 35 degrees south, 139 degrees east, to Amsterdam, 52 degrees north, 5 degrees east, to see my family. If my 25-hour flight leaves at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, 25 hours sounds like hell, what time will it be when we land in Amsterdam? Okay, let's find our difference. 139 minus 5. 139 minus 5 is going to be 4. Hold on. Wait, no, 139 minus, 134, not 4. 134. Now there are 4 minutes per degree, which means there are 536 minutes. Divide that by 60. There are 8.93 hours, which is actually 8 hours and 56 minutes. So we'll say 9 hours. Close enough. All right, if I leave 6 a.m. on Wednesday, what time will it be when my plane arrives in Amsterdam? Well, 25 hours later is going to be 7 a.m. On Thursday. But in Amsterdam, it's going to be 7 a.m. on Thursday minus 9 hours. So it's actually going to be 10 p.m. on Wednesday night. That's a very shoddy rendition of the word Wednesday. Okay, let's do our last question here for working with time. Karen is in Athens, which is 2 hours ahead of Universal Coordinated Time. Marco is in New York, which is 5 hours behind. Karen is going to ring Marco at 10 p.m. on Tuesday, Athens time. So what time and day will Marco be picking it up? So Karen is 2 hours ahead of UTC. Marco is 5 hours behind. So there is a 7-hour difference. So 7 hours before 10 p.m. is going to be 3 p.m. on Tuesday in New York. Marco is going to fly home from New York to Athens. His flight will leave on Wednesday 9 a.m. and will take 11 hours. What time and day will he arrive in Athens? 11 hours later is going to be 8 p.m. in New York. But we also need to add 7 hours to that. So 7 hours to that is going to be 3 a.m. in Athens on Thursday. Remember, you always want to write the day, because if you just wrote 3 a.m., they're probably like, oh, you said Wednesday. Always write the day as well. All right, here are my kind of top 3 tips for acing working with time. All right, questions surrounding those measurements can get really messy and confusing when you've got like different time differences and flights. So take your time, definitely draw diagrams as well. Remember the difference between latitude and longitude. So lat is the first coordinate and it's flat. Longitude is the second, lat is flat. Draw a diagram if you need to. Like I said, scribbling all over the questions. It just kind of helps me realize exactly what I need to figure out. All right, we're going to move on to our final topic here, which is also measurement. It's the practicalities of measurement. Okay. So first you want to get kind of confident at converting between metric units. So I had something that looked exactly like this on my summary sheet, just drawn in pen, right? So you want to draw these little conversion tables. This tells you that to get from centimeters to meters, we need to divide the number by 100. Now you might say, why are you dividing? It should be bigger, right? But if you have 100 centimeters, it's actually 1 meter. The zeros have dropped off, right? The 2 zeros have dropped off. This is representing how many zeros are going to drop off. So we're going to do these 3 conversions first. 200 milliliters to liters. We need to first go back to our conversion. Milliliters to liters is going to be dividing by 1,000. So we're going to do 200 divided by 1,000 is 0.2. So it's going to be 0.2 liters. 6.2 kilometers to centimeters. Kilometers to centimeters is going to be times by 1,000 and then times by 100. So 6.2, we're going to times by 1,000, which is 6,200, and then times that by 100, and it's actually going to be 620,000. And then 89 hectares to square meters. Hectares to square meters is times by 10,000. So 89 times by 10,000 is 890,000. There we go. Square meters. Always write your units. All right, well, we have all that written there for your answer. Okay, so this is something that confuses a lot of students, something called limits of accuracy and absolute error. What we do in practicalities of measurement is kind of provide for the fact that humans aren't infallible and neither are measuring devices. So scales, measuring tapes, the human eye, they're all inaccurate sometimes and inconsistent. So limits of accuracy basically tell us mathematically where the actual measurement is likely to exist, on what scale. So this is exactly what will come on your reference sheet that you'll get in your final exam in year 12, if they haven't changed it by then. It will have these 3 pieces of information. Absolute error is equal to half times the precision. The upper bound is the measurement plus the absolute error, and the lower bound is the measurement minus the absolute error. So absolute error is the greatest possible error mathematically that could have occurred while measuring something. The precision is the smallest unit of measurement on the measuring instrument. So let's say a ruler that goes to millimeters, the precision is going to be 1 millimeter. If a scale reads to 20.4 kilograms, the precision is 0.1 kilograms. If a measuring cup goes by 100 mils, then the precision is 100 mils. Let's say the scale only goes to 21, 22, 23, 24. It only goes up by 1 kilo. Our precision would be 1 kilogram. Okay, in a school experiment, a student measured a length to be 9.4 centimeters. What is the upper limit of accuracy of this measurement? Okay, so our precision here is 0.1 centimeters, which means that our absolute error is half times 0.1 centimeters, which means our absolute error is 0.05 centimeters. To find the upper limit, we just add that 0.05 to 9.4. So our answer would be 9.45. You see that here. 9.45 centimeters. Okay, this is from the NESA sample questions. A person's weight is measured as 79.3 kilograms. What is the precision of this measurement? Okay, so again, we're measuring to 0.1 kilograms, which actually means we're measuring to 100 grams. We've already answered that. What is the lower limit of accuracy on this measurement? So we'll do our absolute error. Half times 100 grams is going to be equal to 50 grams. The lower limit accuracy has to be 79.3 minus what is 50 grams to a kilo, so 0.05. And that would give us, we'll look at our answers here, 0.05, 79.25. Okay, this is another example. Hannah purchases a carton of beer. Each can of beer has a mass of 420 grams. There are 12 cans in the carton, and the carton itself weighs 780 grams. What is the weight of the carton represented in kilos? Okay, so each can of beer has 420 grams. There are 12 of them. So 420 times 12 is 5,040 grams. And the carton is 780 grams plus 780. So the actual weight of the carton is 5,820 grams. To convert that to kilograms, there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So we're going to divide by 1,000 to get our smaller number, even though it's worth the same amount, which is actually equal to 5.82 kilograms. Okay, find the absolute error for the measurement of 11.45 kilometers. We're looking for our smallest part of the measurement. So we're going to 0.01 kilometer, which is 10 meters, because this would be 100 meters. So the absolute error is going to be half times 0.01 kilometers, which should be equal to 0.005 kilometers, so 5 meters. Like that. And then our final question, a rectangular room is measured to be 6.8 meters long and 4.5 meters wide. Find the area of the room. So the area of the room is just going to be the side minus the long side minus the width, 6.8 times 4.5. So 6.8 times 4.5 gives us 30.6 meters squared. Now, the second part of the question is a little bit more complicated. What are the lower and upper bounds of the true length and width of the room? So we need to work out the true length and width and their lower and upper bounds from 6.8 and 4.5. So they both have the same absolute error, which is 0.1 meters. So we times that by half, So our actual absolute error is 0.05 meters, which means our lower and upper bounds of the true length and width are going to be 6.8 minus 0.05, so 6.75 to 6.85, and our width it's going to be 4.45 to 4.55. And then if the third question was what is the lower upper bounds of the true area of the room, you would be doing 6.75 times 4.45 and then 6.55 times 4.55, because that's representing theoretically how small and how big the room could actually be. Alrighty, so how to ace practicalities of measurement. Two things, practice those conversions. They will inevitably be like a small part of the question, but they will be so important to getting like the overall 7 marks. So make sure you know how to convert, don't waste time and make a silly mistake, practice those conversions over and over again. If you're looking for like a little intro to your revision for the day, practicing conversions can be a really great way to do this. Just bust out 10 questions easily. You could honestly at this rate get like AI or ChatGPT to write you practice conversion questions. And the second tip, make sure to think about the precision and think about the measuring instrument that's being used and if your precision makes sense as the smallest unit. So what I'm really saying there is if you have a ruler and you find the precision is 10 centimeters, does that sound accurate? Does that sound like the closest measurement that your ruler can measure? Or are you actually probably writing down 10 millimeters or 1 millimeter or something like that? Okay, we're now going to jump into kind of a little wrap up and chat about the things that I usually end up talking about in these lectures when they're live. The first thing is what we actually covered. So this is your year 11 syllabus, right? You do a 120-hour course, you have 4 topics, and you have 9 subtopics. Oh, sorry, 2, 4, 6, 7 subtopics. We looked at 4 of those subtopics. So we actually covered more than half of the content in terms of looking at what you would be covering in class. Obviously, you do it in much more depth and much more specifics, but those are 4 of the 7 units that you will be doing this year. So you'll see that we didn't touch anything from statistical analysis. That has 2 elements, data analysis and relative frequency and probability. But the only other thing that we didn't touch from algebra was linear relationships. We looked at the only unit from financial, which is money matters. There's obviously other aspects to it. So we have earning and managing money, and we have budgeting and household expenses, but we didn't look at that today. And then within these is obviously other like subtopics, but we did do a decent amount of what we have for year 11. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've got on the screen right now, and then I'm going to go through the questions that I always get at the end of lectures. The first thing that I have up here is kind of a little way that I like to think about approaching year 11. Step 1 is that you do need to kind of accept it's going to be stressful. I think everyone goes into it like, I can make this work for me. Like I'll, be the person that like, it's going to suck at points. It's going to be really stressful. Some weeks you'll have 5 different assessment tasks or 7 different exams. There is nothing quite like the year 11 and year 12 schedule. So you kind of have to accept it's going to be stressful and hard, but do not let it dominate your life, and kind of make a pact with yourself that you won't let it ruin your life. Try your very best to stay up to date in your maths class. When you do fall behind, I still remember the times I fell behind because I was away from school or I had a competition or whatever I was away for. You want to kind of prioritize by cutting parts of your homework out. So the best way to do this is to only attempt the harder questions. So if you're going to cut homework out, you want to cut out, like if it's a 10 question exercise, get rid of the first 4 questions or the first 5 questions. And the last kind of most important thing you can do is to plan the revision weeks out from the exam. So let's say you have the exam here at the end of August and it's the kind of like final week of July. You want to be finalizing your notes, making sure that you've got like summary sheets ready. And then those first 3 weeks or first 4 weeks of August, you want to be doing for 1 week untimed practice with notes. So you can kind of have everything out. You can take 6 hours to do the paper, do as long as you need. Then within 2 weeks, you want to move into like timed and a few notes. And then within 1 week, you want to be doing like the full exam conditions. So just the reference sheet that you would be given in the exam and no notes apart from that, and timed. Doing things timed is the best, and I mean best thing you can do for yourself, because at the end of the day, your exams are timed, and that is the element that ruins people's preparation, right? You can do all this preparation and you can be incredible at networks or stats or whatever it is in 2 hours, but you only get an hour in this exam or whatever it is, right? So turning your revision into timed practice is the number 1 way to succeed. Number 1 way. There is nothing that compares. You have to do things timed. It is what got me the best marks that I could get, and it's what got a lot of students that I know stuffed over in exams because they hadn't done things timed. Okay, the questions that I always get at the end of the lectures revolve around: where do I find past papers? How do I revise something if I still don't understand it? And what do I do if I'm a procrastinator and I'm really stressed? So I'll answer those 3 questions for you now. Number 1, where do I find practice papers? There are a million different ways. Number 1, we have a lot of them on ATAR Notes and TuteSmart and 800 Notes Plus and kind of all over our sites. If you have a tutor, your tutor will generally have past papers that they can provide you with. If you are doing TuteSmart tutoring through ATAR Notes, we always have a million past papers. If you can't access any of those, ACE HSC has a lot of practice papers. They are also available just kind of like Googling around, to be honest. Sometimes a random PDF will pop up. There's a lot of those like notes websites that people sell notes and past papers to that you can definitely use. And then also you can try and go through your school and see if they've kept previous papers. So they might have last year's trial paper or last year's prelim paper or whatever it is, and you can see if they'll provide that to you. If you are unable to find past papers, another way to kind of continue revising is by taking chapter reviews and turning those into past papers. So all you need is like 4 different chapter reviews, staple them together, and you basically got a past paper. It's just the questions will be sorted by topic. They won't be like intertwined. It doesn't really change anything, right? So that's where to find past papers. Second thing, what do I do if I don't understand a concept that I've learned 100 times? The first tip I would kind of give you is figure out if there's a new way you could learn this concept. Are you only learning it visually? Is it something that they keep drawing diagrams for, but maybe a word problem would make it easier, or vice versa? Maybe you need to draw a diagram. Maybe you need to switch it to a visual problem. Secondly, find a new person to explain it to you. Maybe your teacher isn't working, or maybe your friend or your peers aren't really getting in your head the right way. And the third thing would be to take it to someone that you know might be better help, like a tutor or like an older sibling who's done standard maths, or someone that you think might have a better perspective. Then finally, look it up, right? There's a million different ways you can find the answers to things online: YouTube, course videos, past papers, study notes, which I say we also sell the 800 notes plus like study booklet that has all of the utility topics, and it explains how to answer the questions. It's not just the answers. And the final question I always get is, I'm a procrastinator. What do? I procrastinate everything, blah, blah, blah. So I'm a massive procrastinator. I procrastinated my entire life. I remember when I was in year 3 or year 4 and we had spelling words and we would have to do them Monday through Thursday, I would do them all on Thursday. And that was just writing out a word, right? That was just writing out 10 words. I would kill for that to be my homework now. So I was procrastinating my primary school homework. I procrastinated all through primary school and high school, and I procrastinate in university. And I will confidently say I have never missed a due date. I have never handed something in late. I have never been late on anything. And I've maintained pretty consistently high marks. I have a distinction average at uni, despite the fact that I hand most assessments in the day of that they're due. And probably like the afternoon, evening, right? I've done things a couple days ahead for extraneous circumstances, like I'm going away or I have an exam on that day or whatever it is, but I am generally not a very, kind of advanced worker. So there are definitely ways that I have learned to handle it. And I think when it clicked for me was I went back to my high school to do like a Distinguished Achievers presentation or something where like they ask us how we get good ATARs, something like that. And I remember someone got asked the question, how do you stop procrastinating? And she said, well, just accept it. Like, accept that that's how you work. And even though I'd been doing it for 13 years, it took like that for me to go, oh my God, I just need to like accept that this is how I work, right? I will never be someone who can wake up and just start studying at 7 a.m. I find it really hard. I know that everyone's like, oh, just be more disciplined. I'm just not that person, right? I need to do things before I study. I need to have a life around study. So accepting that you are a procrastinator and that that's how you work, I think is really important. Now, there's so many ways you can go and Google about how to stop procrastinating. I'm sure there's TED Talks and hypnotism videos and books you can read, but I'm not going to do that. I accept that this is how I work, but I have ways that I handle it. Number 1, breaking my work into chunks is really what saved me, right? By breaking things into things that are achievable, there's this tip of like, just sit down and do it for 5 minutes. Just sit down and start the assignment for 5 minutes, and 90% of the time, you actually end up going over that 5 minutes. Breaking my work into things like write out to-do list, print off document, make document, email professor question, text friend about due date. Like, there's so many things that you can just write out that you'll easily tick off. And instead of just having a to-do list that says law assessment, it's like you're going to take that off in 6 weeks. You know what I mean? Having something that helps you kind of break things down into more achievable chunks. And I'll give you a way that I do this visually as well. I'll show you kind of what one of my little books looks like. Okay, so here's one, I think. Yeah, so this was a final exam for a subject. I reckon I did that. When did I do this subject? A while ago. Probably this year or last year. Okay, so it was my final exam. It was 50% of my grade. It was due Monday the 15th at 10 a.m. And I had 3 questions to answer. Each of those was 750 words. And every time I have an assessment, I draw out like a little kind of like I don't know, tracker, right? So these are all the words I had to do. And it was Friday night, Saturday, and Saturday. I wanted to write them across those days. I think I did actually kind of stick to that, right? And I get to, every time I write a couple hundred words, I get to like fill in my little tracker so that I'm like, I feel like I'm achieving something. And I am achieving something, but it's not just like, oh, let me just do this assessment, right? It's like, okay, let me, actually have a bit more to track and like make me feel a little bit better that I'm actually like doing work and I'm not just, like doing the 2,000 words and breaking it down. This is another massive to-do list I had where it was highlighted into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I could at least see that like, okay, not everything's getting done on Tuesday or not everything has to be done right now. So those are some ways that I kind of like break things down into better chunks. And then I think in terms of like actual working, there are definitely ways you can avoid distraction. For me, distraction is kind of the core of my procrastination. First of all, do not disturb, or like, is that what it's called? Focus mode on your phone is super helpful. I also love this app, I'm getting it up for you now, called Forest. And essentially what it does is you plant imaginary trees, like you unlock all these trees, you plant imaginary trees, and if you open your phone and you go on other apps, it will kill the trees that you've planted. So I like to do that, and I've planted like 1 billion trees, and it tracks like how long you study for and like what your best time of studying is. And it actually showed me my best time is like 6 p.m. on weeknights or something like that. The app is not opening, but just have a look. It's like $2.99. You can get a free version as well, but I think it's well worth it. That's called Forest. There's also ways that you can like shut down your browser. So you can get ways that will shut down you accessing anything else. So you essentially can only do your uni work or your school work or whatever it is. But I think with procrastination and stress, the core of it is that it's not the end of the world. Your life will not be over if you don't get something done. But try and remind yourself why you're doing this work and what you're working towards, and breaking it down, I promise you, is the easiest way to kind of overcome that mental battle of like, oh, I have so much to do. Put everything else aside, just do the summary sheet. And it's once you get into the work that things become easy. You go, you know what? It actually wasn't that bad. Like, I guess I can do another half hour. Also, if you've got friends that study really well, just like study with them, because you'll have to shut up and you'll have to focus, and you don't want to be like the embarrassing person that distracts everyone, right? You want to get stuff done. Those are kind of my tips with procrastination. If you've got other questions, please continue placing them in the chat. I'm sure I've been answering them throughout. I will continue answering them. But that is all from me. Thank you so much for joining me for this lecture. I hope that you found it helpful. I hope that you found it engaging and that the content gave you a little bit of a peek into what year 11 is going to look like. We do run these free lectures every couple of months. So the next series will be in April, then July, and then September. So you can check back in with us, and we'll continue covering stuff that is relevant to the part of year 11 that you're in. Obviously, you all do it in different orders, but we kind of tailor it to like, hey, you're halfway through year 11, or hey, it's coming up to prelim season. So this is obviously kind of your like welcome to year 11 lecture. So I hope to see you guys back in those other lectures. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you found it helpful. It's been a pleasure on my part. Best of luck with starting year 11. You're going to nail it. All the best, guys. Thank you so much, and good luck. You've got this. Bye.